Hello everyone, this is Brandon Gomes from New Relic, and I would like to present New Relic Browser today. I'm part of the sales engineering team, and one of the things New Relic can help is to understand what's the end-user experience. The idea of New Relic Browser is to understand what's happening on the user side. It's important to mention about 80% of the processing happens on the browser side. If we are not monitoring that side, we are losing big part of monitoring. We can push the server side very quick. We can get transactions. Using some codes from Google, we can find big drops in the conversion funnels when you are looking e-commerce or websites interacting with the end users. And it's very important to push everything to the new limits. Especially in the e-commerce, this is affecting the sales, and if the users don't have a good experience, they go to the nearest competitor and they are going to do some actions and probably not returning to the website or sometimes giving bad reviews, and this is badly affecting the business. So that's why it's so important to optimize not only the server side but also the user side. It's also important to take in considerations. We have big differences between the desktop users and the mobile users. Google is pushing the page rankings now towards the mobile experience. There are loads of responsive templates, and sometimes they cause some unnecessary delays on the end users. So it's very important to optimize the image size, compress them, optimize the CSSs, sometimes consolidate them into one, and also make sure we don't have JavaScript blocking the DOM processing or causing unnecessary delays. And quite very important to make sure those JavaScripts are working as intended. That's the whole idea. Now we can move to the idea of New Relic browser itself. The idea is to have a very consistent experience regardless the browser model, browser version, and the device. That's the idea of New Relic browser. Now going to the product itself, this is New Relic monitoring New Relic. When you go to docs.newrelic.com, that's the application we are monitoring at this stage. Quite important things. We can go now to the backend and front end. Now we can look what's happening here. So we saw some spikes on the backend. Now we see some of those spikes spreading to the end user. The three critical areas in New Relic browser it will be Ajax endpoints, JavaScript errors, and the session traces. That's what makes the product quite unique. The idea here is to monitor end-to-end, and we can find, for instance, if we have any problems with Ajax endpoints, what pages are accessing these endpoints, and if one of them is not working properly, sometimes it has snowball effects on the page load cycle. JavaScript errors, typically they are used to validate user inputs, could be phone numbers, credit card numbers, dates, and a number of other parameters. If they are not working properly, maybe we're getting rubbish at database level, and maybe we are getting invalid data, or even worse, maybe we are missing some proper elements. Sometimes JavaScripts are used to increase the visibility on the page. Could be jQuery making some manipulations to show graphs, show animation, and if it's not working, maybe the page is not looking that great. It's very important to monitor what's happening with them. And finally, the other important piece of this puzzle is the session traces. This is something based on the W3C specification called the Navigation Time API. All the browsers do one part of that. That's the page rendering and the processing, DOM processing. And this is done by default by all modern browsers. Regardless the users like or not, they want or not, all the browsers are collecting this page. They just need to expose this on tools like Chrome Developer Tools or Firebug, and we can access this, and we can also collect additional information to relate the backend and front ends and augment this with the user actions. One of the details of the Relic browser is ranking the page views, very similar to what we do to the transactions. We can find here different views. The after response time is a combination of throughput and the page load time. In this case, we have this one have a huge impact, and we can find here what's the performance of this page. Important details here, we have a breakdown of those details, what's going on with this page, what volumes we are talking about, and we can access here the breakdown of the AJAX elements on the page, and we can find something quite unique in Relic. If a page load is not working properly, it can be the front end, could be the back end. In the traditional environments, the first one to be blamed is to be the front-end developer. Sometimes actually not front-end problem. One of the tools we have available, if you open this one, we can find here what's happening on the backends. So this one is the slowest on the backend as well. If we open here the traces, we can find sometimes the transaction itself is taking 14 seconds. So that's something we need to now look on the backend and find here what is actually happening. So this is something backend and front-end developers can collaborate, and instead of finger pointing, they are going to work together to solve this. We can change the view and find, for instance, what's the most I'm consuming. That's absolute terms. Now I find this one. The new Relic server for Linux is underperforming quite consistently, and we can find here what's going on the backend as well. So that's one of the ways we can correlate the two layers, and that's why it's so important to understand what is actually happening. At code level, in the transaction trace we saw, it was the rendering part that was very slow. When some page loads are not performing well, we can look the session traces. This is triggered by page load times, could be the backend, could be the front end, and we can find the whole story about this page. This is coming from W3C navigation time. This is a formal specification for all the browsers, and we can pick one of these sessions here. This one backend was brilliant, less than 1/10 of a second, so don't have any problems on the backend here. The DOM processing was acceptable. Page was loaded in 2 seconds. That's actually very good. And the duration, that's a very important concept in Relic, is unrelated to page load. As we see here, 2 seconds, absolutely fine. Duration is the page displayed on the browser. So it was about 7 minutes. It was displayed here, and it was available to the user. One of the things, this is now unique session. In the overview page, page views, we are looking at aggregates data. Here we are looking one unique session. So it happened on 7th of March, 7:49 a.m. GMT, and it was user running Firefox 51 on Mac computer. First impressions of this session, the server side was quick. That's the purple section of this session. And then we have the DOM processing, that's in yellow, still very fast. And we have finally the visible part of this page starting here. And now we can see what's going on. This JavaScript is in block mode. It's not an error, but it creates some delays on the page cycle. Now we see here user interactions. That's something unique to Relic. We capture not only the backend, but you also augment with the user actions. Can be scrolling window, mousing, getting some input with the keyboard, and user action need to be captured here. As you can see here, we have multiple user actions, and quite often we find AJAX elements rendering in response to those user actions. Here we have one that's also in block mode, almost a second wasted here. And all across the session we find these timeouts. This is a JavaScript that's monitoring the page load time, especially the duration part. This JavaScript is going to close the session if the users take no action. At 10 minutes, it's going to close. The session ends if the JavaScript takes action or if the users close the tab, close the page, or navigate to another page. So whatever happens first is going to end the session. In case of mobile devices, if the page is open and the browser goes on the background, it's going to freeze all the cycle. Then when it comes back to the foreground, it's going to start a new session. And the characteristics can be slightly different from the normal session. The other important detail is when we look here the Ajax endpoints. We saw some of them in the session trace, and this is one of them. We can move to a single endpoint. Now we are looking unique here. And we have the network time, the biggest slice. The application itself is fine. No big problem, 100 milliseconds, quite brilliant. The benefit here is going to see the page views. Here we have perhaps 15, 20 different pages accessing this endpoint. And that's the snowball effect you can have when you have a slow endpoint. That's why it's so important to understand this. And we can always correlate to page load and understand what else is involved in this page load, what's the Ajax calls we have. So in this case, we have 4 of them. And if one of them starts getting slow, especially this one, we need to have a look to streamline these specific endpoints and reduce the effect on every single page accessing it. The other crucial aspect in the end-user monitoring, it will be the JavaScript. This is not only tricky, but also requires some extensive tests when you are trying to replicate potential issues across different operating systems, different browsers, and versions of those browsers. And that's something complex, not the task itself, but the number of tests you need to perform. By default, most developers are using either Windows or Mac, quite typically to be Chrome, Firefox, or Internet Explorer, but most developers don't have all the browsers or the combination available. And JavaScript that works very nicely in one browser is not guaranteed to work in a different browser or a different operating system. That's what the new Relic agents can bring and help to understand what's happening at real users. If we get this, for instance, we can understand what's happening here, and this is affecting Chrome only. And we can grab the details of this interaction, and now we are moving to unique occurrences of this JavaScript. As you see here, Windows Chrome 56, and now we have the full stack trace for this problem, and it's generally affecting Chrome 56 coming from different pages. This is tracking from Marketo. What it does is scoring the page views, building the user's profile to optimize the marketing campaigns. One of the benefits the developers can take from this is finding very quickly where this problem is happening. I have my formatter for JavaScript is happening here on line number 10. If I inspect this one, I can find straight away that's the init part of this JavaScript. And this is breaking all the pages. And in this case, New Relic is actually not scoring or tracking the users browsing the documentation. This is important when we are trying to understand what's the impact. In this case, it is trying to optimize Drupal or trying to track what users are doing during these interactions. And this is also lost here. This is not loading at all. And there are times we have inline JavaScript, sometimes we have minified versions. That's one of the upcoming features in the next release of New Relic browser. If we have a minified JavaScript, we don't see stack trace. We are implementing the source maps, and then we can upload either through the UI or through the API. And once we have that, we can understand exactly what's happening on a minified JavaScript. If we build one of them, maybe this one, perfect. That's a symptom of a minified JavaScript. You cannot see any stack error here, That's the next interaction of the Relic browser. We are going to open panels where you can drag and drop the source maps, or you can upload through the API, and then you can see the full details of JavaScripts like that one. The other important aspects of end-user monitoring is when you are looking who is browsing the website. That's one important aspect here when you are dealing with project managers. They have priorities in allocating resources to fix problems. In this case, we see here Chrome is the most used browser among the Relic users, and is going to top of priorities for any fix when you have any problems. If we click on this one, now we are going to move to unique versions of Chrome. That means we saw in the Marketo example, Chrome 56 was the only browser affected. That means all hands on deck. Chrome 56 is also the most used browser here. We are peaking 20 pages per minute. If we eliminate 56, now we have about 3 pages per minute. That's a huge task to maintain something like 44 or even something older. If we investigate here on the versions, it's not even a page per minute. That helps to prioritize any work we are going to do on Chrome. If the fix works for 56 and 44, that's brilliant. If it doesn't, most of companies can afford to live with this. The impact is minimal. There is no priority here. That's a very similar story when you look at IE, for instance, when you find things like IE8, that's one case here, and we can set priorities to tackle these specific versions. Very below 1 page per minute against 1.5, so it's a difference of 15 times. And that's where you're going to put the effort. So no attention to IE8, not even supported by Microsoft. And we are setting here all the efforts on the current versions, or at least the supported versions. And we can change this view, find, for instance, what's the impact on page load times. Then we are looking the DOM processing and page rendering, consolidating CSSs to reduce the page loads, having a look on the JavaScript to make sure they are not blocking the page load cycle when you're looking at the DOM processing and the page rendering. And we can cycle through different browsers. And this one, something symptomatic. Android has very mixed views of high-end devices like the Edge from Samsung and very low-end devices like white labels sold through the network operators. The difference in the GPU is huge, also the CPUs typically to be maximal dual core against quad cores on the high-end devices. And we are going to see the biggest difference is going to be the DOM processing, simply because the device itself doesn't have the power to do that. And that's where we are starting to use the session traces to understand how long the pages are taking. Maybe you can gzip off them. Maybe you can do some consolidation in JavaScript, less calls, more code in the same JavaScript. And we are optimizing the time for the page loads. That's very important. Here, for instance, we can analyze the throughput for this one. And now we know it's not a huge effort. It is not a priority for any changes here. But if it was Chrome, then we need to have a second look. That's the most used browser. The other important detail, it will be the geography. This is something we need to consider. Depending where the users are, we have different page load times that are dictated by the network providers and also the device they have. This produces a very mixed view when you have in consideration different geographies. Typically, Europe and US, some parts of Asia, you'll have nice times. Other countries, they don't have that brilliant networks. And one of the things we can do here Using Europe as one example, we can zoom into an area and understand what's going on. So look in France, mostly green. This is done by reversing the IP address. We don't collect the IP address itself, because in some countries it's considered personal identifiable information. We analyze the IP reverse and then we put them on the map to gather this information. Here we can find some users not having the very best experience. And then we can zoom a region. And now we can go very granular. One of the details we see here, when I selected France and this specific region, it is putting filters. We can use this to go even more. I can select here the service providers, and we have this specific one giving a consistent body experience. So that's a culprit for this page interaction here. And we can add filters. We can stack filters like at orange, for instance. Now let's find this by page URL. What's the user experience? So now you see here the page that was involved in this session, and we can understand what's the impact it's having. We can stack any filters here, and we can find, for instance, when you are looking at different ones, we can differentiate the user experience and by region, so it can be very granular when you are going that level. And we can add new filters. We can use custom attributes as well, like these ones. We can filter, we can analyze and understand what's going on the user side. And one of the use cases for this specific part of Relic to be the CDNs. If we look here, we have some countries that are performing quite poorly in terms of network performance and page load times. That's the time we need to consider Amazon routes, or Amazon CloudFront, or Akamai to deliver content locally. In this case, we are measuring against the CDN and not against the main server. And in this case, it can be a lot faster, it can be a more pleasant user experience. At the end of this spectrum, we can analyze the raw data generated by New Relic. Here we can find something. I'm going to move to a different instance. For a few seconds, we have some more granular graphs here. And then we can start using this raw data to go in very good details. If I go to my dashboards, I can find some of them showing the page loads. Then we can start analyzing data in real time. This one, I'm just capturing things at every minute. If I show the timeline, I go to next. We are going to see the breakdown by blocks of 15 seconds. In this case, we have the full picture of these specific parts of New Relic, and we are looking here how it's performing in real time. Quite often, we are going to see numbers changing. There you go. Pages under a second, it was 11, now it's 13. In 1 to 3 seconds, it was something like 5, I think. Now it's 6, and it's changing dynamically. That's one of the benefits of the Relic browser. We can do something like counts. Then we can find here the page views and insights. This is raw data we are collecting. And we can do something like this 1 minute ago. So this is the number of pages. Now I can find out how is the variation if we do something like a time series graph. That's the number of pages that we're loading. And even better, if I do something like this in terms of time, average duration of these page loads, I can find here the variations of the page loads. And now we can do something like the DOM processing, for instance. That's a huge impact. And we can analyze what's the user experience looking from this perspective. Or even better, we can do something like this and group by. That's a facet in insights terms. And you can find here by different browsers. Let's find here what's happening at that level. So now we can find out what the user is experiencing on Chrome, on Firefox, and if I remove my time series, we actually can see the numbers behind those graphs here. And now we have something to start having on some data we can manipulate and finding what's the real user experience. So definitely Chrome leading the pack very fast. Firefox should be a little bit faster. Opera is traditionally fast, and right now they are using some engines sharing with Google, and it was quite similar to Firefox. That's the interesting aspect here. And once we have this information, we can share with end users. We can add this to any web pages, could be behind the login, could be within SMS like Drupal, or even WordPress, or any application supporting the HTML tags. We are using one div, one iframe. If they support it, it's going to be fully synchronized with New Relic information in real time. And the other one we can analyze here, if I filter again by my ones, can understand here what's the mobile traffic. That's quite important. We are analyzing here the difference among the different devices, and it's important to understand what's the user experience in terms of throughput, in terms of page loading. It's quite interesting to find here Symbian. And one of the characteristics of insights, we can set filters. Once we have a facet, we can filter the entire dashboard. Let's get iPhone, and now the entire dashboard is filtered. And we have here 24 hours. If I want to override, and if I have different ones like this one, the device is looking since yesterday, this one is looking 24 hours, I can normalize my entire dashboard, let's say 6 hours, and now all the dashboards are following the same pattern. So we can consolidate different views, and now we can filter here Safari on iPhone, and you can go very granular when you're analyzing the information in insights. That's the benefit of collecting this data. We can see here what's being collected. That's very important when you have problems with compliance. And if I don't put anything here, it's 1 hour, and we can see the JSON behind this query. As you can see here, there's no personal data. This is pure performance metrics. This is the default data collection in New Relic. And one of the benefits, we also can export to CSV depending on the query. And important here, all this data on New Relic browser, APM, and insights, we can augment them with custom attributes or custom events on case of insights. We can create new tables we call events. And we also can add totally external information, could be collected from disks or routers, electricity meters, water meters. Doesn't need to be related to New Relic. We can send a call, send the information, and then we can analyze on insights. Once we have that, we can filter, let's say, by page URL, group by, can build my query, I can run and add to my dashboards, existing ones, new ones, and I can have very interesting information from insights and relating them to the browser. The other important aspects of end user monitoring is when you're looking the business side of the story. It's very important when we are measuring the impacts of page loads on the business itself. Here we're analyzing the conversion funnel, and we see a significant drop from the homepage to the login. That's fair enough. This is expected. Not all users have login to the application. Maybe they are going to the login when they are just looking something else. But important here is this conversion at the very end of the funnel. If we are losing some customers between browsing and adding shopping carts to the final clicks, we need to find out what's the problem here Is it related to errors? Is it related to the page loads? Any problems on the users? Now I can use insights to group by or facet by the page URL, and now we're going to understand, is this a delay? Is this another problem? Why you're looking here? Quite often we find JavaScript errors in these parts of the application, and it could be one cause. We can always deep dive. We can find here what's going on. And if I do something like this, instead of finding the funnel, now I can find something, select average time for the duration of the session. And then I can find out what's going on with this page. Then I just need to remove this one. Let's find here from 1 day ago. Oops. Let's take this part. Let's invite the syntax. There you go. Average duration, 2.1 seconds. This is not exactly bad of any page. Sometimes the users are just impatient. And we can analyze here if it is something on a specific timeline. If we do something like this one, we can do very granular. If we do something like this one, 03, 07 at midnight, until let's say 1 a.m. If I don't get any attributes on the time zone, is going to use the default for the user. In this case, there's a significant difference. It was 2.1, now we're getting 2.8. It was a result of extra load on the server, and we're hitting some thresholds here. And one of the nice features of Insights, if you are taking big screens, you can say from 2.5 seconds, we turn this into yellow. From 2.7, we turn into red to alert people something is going on. Or you can do something like this. If we say the limit is 2, now we are running into excess here, and we can give visual clues or something that's requires some attention from the developers or operations. When you look here, the average duration, we can also analyze DOM processing, page rendering, network time, backends, and we can scrutinize this data coming from the browser. The Relic browser gives a very complete information when you look at the layers in the application. The idea of using Insights is to go more granular and to produce our own reports. So that's the logic behind this idea here. And that's the way you can find here. Let's find what was the background, for instance, backend. Now we can find here how long it was taking. So we can analyze different parameters, and now we can decide, do we need to engage the backend developers or just say front-end developers, or do we need to find if there's a problem with the network? We can optimize the resources. In terms of project management, it will be quite important. We are not using unnecessary time from different people. We are going straight to the root cause, and we are optimizing what we are putting here on the browser side. There was one important detail. For some users, this geography is still available, and we are still supporting this. We can analyze up to 5 countries in details. In this case, it was already taken here. And we can select them to understand what's the experience down to country level. Similar to the geography, just the old way to do it. Some users still like this graph. It's a very powerful way to understand what's going on with the users, and we can apply different criteria here. That's slightly different from the filterable geography. they complement each other. And once we get more and more filters, we can segregate and analyze specific sessions and understand exactly what's the user experience. Now I open the session for questions and answers, and I would like to invite everyone to post the questions in the chat window. I would like to remind this session is being recorded. We are going to post this on the website, and it's going to be available for future reference. We also are taking follow-ups. If anyone has more specific questions or needs to have a more detailed presentation or relating browser backends and insights, or even combining with synthetics, we are fully available. We are happy to help here. The idea of this session is to give a very high-level review. It's almost a helicopter view. And once we have that, we can go on a deep dive on the browser and related to insights in other parts of New Relic.
Hi, Breno. This is David here. Actually, there is some questions there, and maybe you didn't see them.
Oh, okay.
So maybe, yeah. Can you see the questions pane, Breno?
No, I cannot see them.
Okay, so maybe I'll call them out, if that works for you. So the first question is New Relic Browser a RUM tool or UM tool?
Yes, it is. Every single page served by Apache, NGX, or IIS is injecting this specific JavaScript for New Relic. It's capturing the end-user experience. Yes, it is RUM, or EUM, sometimes it's called. It is.
Perfect. Next question from Gavin. So Gavin asks, are there any online materials, libraries for finding useful dashboard dials and measurements?
Yes, we have some examples. And one of the things I'm doing for every single customer is building these dashboards and insights. So that's where I feel the power of New Relic browser. We have some nice examples. I was using the documentation as examples for the page rendering in the browser. We have some interesting parts here explaining how to use the insights, how to use the New Relic browser to scrutinize all the documentation on docs.newrelic.com and also learn.newrelic.com. If you go to New Relic University, this is publicly available. There's no need to log in or create any account. We can go straight here and get this information in bite size. Instead of learning one feature and take maybe 1 hour to learn something, we can go on these courses. In this case of browser, most of them are 5 minutes, and typically they are under 10 minutes of them. So it will be something very specific. We don't need to go the entire session to learn something. And concerning the dashboards, I'm more than happy to share a number of them. When I look here on my internal instance, I marked everything with my name, and I have a number of them. We can find here, for instance, what's the mobile overview, and we can, I think this one is, this instance, it is actually empty. That's for another instance. And I can find here some information about the, let's say, my SLA compliance. That's something quite important. We need to respond to management. Right now, we have some mixed views, especially on this one here, and we have here the browser. So I can apply the filter to the entire application, and I can find here on the storefront, that's the application that's monitoring on this site. Right now, we are actually looking very good on the SLA part. So I'm more than happy to share all these dashboards. Please feel free to ping the account executive, and I'll get this. In New Relic, we have a feature we can export the JSON and get this JSON on a different instance. And I'm more than happy to do that and customize the dashboard for specific needs.
Great, Breno. And one final question from David. How do you get source maps enabled?
It is almost GA. We have a number of users, or big customers in this case. They are helping with the closed beta. We are going GA hopefully very soon. And I can Depending on the instance I'm here, maybe I have visibility of this one. I cannot promise it is available on this one. We are very selective enabling this specific feature. Eventually you have here, if I go to my JavaScript errors, interesting one, nothing here. Okay, we have one. No, this one doesn't have it enabled. It will be a panel underneath this area, and it's going to be a drag and drop for the source maps. Then we can troubleshoot them. Or using the API, there are two options for this one. It's coming, and it's going to be very soon.
So David also asked, can he also be part of the closed beta? Is that a possibility, Brenno?
We can discuss this. We can get the account executive to evaluate the needs, and if it's an interesting use case, definitely we can give that.
Perfect, that makes sense. So, so David or anyone else, if you're interested in taking part in that beta, just reach out to your account exec. And also, I just want to say, as you're leaving today, just make sure to fill in that survey. So, we also gives us feedback on the webinar itself, and if you have any ideas for future webinars, and also if you want to sign up for a New Relic demo, you can do that there as well. And also want to say thanks very much to Brenno for a very interactive and very detailed webinar. Thanks as usual, Brenno, for that.
Welcome. Welcome everyone. And I invite now to reach out to AEs. Now I'll be happy to help with the alerting system. I didn't mention this a slightly different part. And also with insights and any other aspect of New Relic browser and the betas as well.
Great. Hope everyone has a great day. Thanks very much again. Bye-bye.